are the things that I could ask in a phone call that would better qualify whether or not we should take the meeting. And I told him, you should not be incentivizing me to do anything I can to get you a meeting, because then it's in my best interest to take any situation and force a meeting with it, and then you pay me a commission, which has a 40% probability of leading into a dead end. That's a complete waste of a resource. So this is the type of thing that you guys, so this goes back to last year's segmentation, right? In terms of what is it about the jobs we win, what is it about the jobs that we don't win that we can learn from, and start segmenting on things that we hypothesize about, right? Now, of the proposals we wrote, we won 90% of the jobs. What this tells you is we're extremely good at writing proposals, less good at taking meetings. So if I can get better quality meetings and I can keep that 90% win rate, but I can get the right proposal percentage up from say 60% to something above 60%, then I'm going to have a huge impact on the ROI of the organization. Of the times that we won the job, 40% of the time we get future work, and 60% of the time we didn't. So we also look at what are we not doing well when we actually deliver the program, and we realize that, you know what, some of these organizations are just not very big, and they don't have future training needs beyond the one issue we outlined. So we're not really doing anything wrong there. It's just that there's not a lot of long-term business. But that's also like, well, why are we wasting our time going after business that's a one-shot deal when what is it about the clients that lead to future businesses that we can learn from, so that we get more meetings, more proposals, more wins from organizations that are going to basically lead to future business. So I don't know how many steps you're going to have. It's not going to match this, but there is a process going on. It may be formalized or not, but you just got to map out what are all the things that occur. This is fairly simple. I'll show you a more complex example in a minute. But if you actually track this shit at the individual level, you will recognize that there is variance in performance, and this is what the VP of sales should be doing, or at least who has control or oversight over their territory. And if no one is doing this in your organization, then one, there's massive malpractice going on. Two, there's a massive opportunity for you to bring this level of sophistication, and it will change the business. It will absolutely move the needle. And if you look at what the average revenue is on a job, and you can then think about your cost of providing it and what your profit margin is, you can also quantify this is what Tim did to the business in terms of changing the outcomes. It's like, the stuff I did for them was worth $400,000 or $500,000 in terms of moving the needle.
How do you know that 60% is just small? They just don't need any more training. It's not like something. How do you measure like that's the limit of what you can do?
So I'm not sure.
The 60% of end contact. How do you know that's just you can't do anything about that? Like how do we?
This here?
Yes. The bottom part, the very bottom end contact. Like how do you know?
Oh, you follow up with them. Okay. So that was also my job, saying, hi, it's Tim calling from the Lawyer Institute. You might remember we ran some training for your sales force a year ago. Okay. The other thing that we do too is we do evaluations at the end of the program and measure whether or not people are happy. But a lot of it's just follow-up, and that's the thing is, when recruiting for this program, one thing we do is we call back to organizations that have sent, so for instance, Jeff and Kyle are with Cullen Diesel. Al Cullen's been sending us 1 or 2 people a year for a long, long time. And I have a lunch with him every summer to be like, is there anyone that you want to bring to the program again? Because I know there's like Fortis BC, BC Hydro, TELUS. These are organizations that have huge sales forces. And it really comes down to individual people like yourselves that you self-identified, hey, I do this training and found it. But if I find that there's organizations that are sending people here for years, there's nothing systematic about it. It just happened these people found the program. But I go back to them and be like, can you help talk to others in the organization? I'm not trying to be salesy, but I'm like, there might be other people in there that could benefit from this, right? So when you look at, for instance, independent realtors, I mean, there's always realtors in this program, but it's not efficient for us to go after them because realtors are all independent. It's not like Century 21 has a training and development manager who set of people. One of the things we identify in this, so you don't know unless you investigate. But I mean, a lot of salespeople just don't follow up on dead leads because they assume it's a waste of time when they don't realize there's a huge opportunity to learn and segment why you won versus why you lost. And that knowledge can make you way more efficient the next go around. That's an example of fuzzy versus go back to quantify it, figure out why you won, why you lost. So for instance, one hypothesis that we had was that we win jobs where we have alumni. And when we have an alumnus from Laurier that's in management making the decision, we're more likely to win the job. That was the hypothesis. Nobody ever tested it. Now, there's something here called confirmation bias going on. So if you are in a relationship and your spouse or significant other gives you shit for like leaving the light on or not turning the light off or whatever the case might be, but you actually do some measures. So I would do like an experiment with my spouse, and I would like actually be conscious about, okay, I'm leaving the room, and I note that I'm not turning the light off. So I have my little post-it note, my little ticks, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna start measuring. It's new day, new week starts on Sundays, okay? So this week, all right, they're like, you're always leaving the light off. I'm like, well, actually, I left the light on 6 times out of 20.
Well, it's not confirmation bias.
No, it's called, no, that's measured.
Because
the point is, they're going to weight when you leave the light on as a heavier observation than when you turn it off. And you're like, well, because my argument was, you're right, I do leave the light on sometimes, but you're not giving me credit for when I'm turning it off. I know, probably like, you don't want to hear it.
But here's the thing.
Really, you did that? Yeah, I did it. But Tish will tell you, like, she wanted to kill me. But the point is that I measure it, and if you're like, and you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. I left the light on X time this week. But by being mindful, I mean, it was almost like she complained. I became mindful about it, and rather than changing my behavior right away, I wanted to run the experiment, leaving the behavior as status quo, just to see what happened. I realized, oh yeah, I was about to leave the room. I was going to leave it on. I'm going to mark that. That's my failure. I left the light on, mistake. But I'd actually see, right? So you never really know the upside limit. But if you have never done this, you will have hypotheses that you've never tested, and until you track it, you won't realize whether or not your hypothesis is right. So here's the thing. When we won jobs and we had alumni there, we'd be like, see, there's another one where we won with alumni. But I didn't think and no one had actually counted. So when I actually looked at, of the population that we wrote proposals for, right? So here's the thing. When we won jobs, the population of jobs we won, there was more with alumni than without. And that's why they had the observation. But that wasn't the proper measurement, because of what subpopulation did he have the opportunity to win the job? So let me break it down for you. Try to show this. So let's say that you won 10 jobs. Oh, here, let me say. Let's say that you won 100 jobs, okay? And 70 of those 100 jobs that you won had alumni. Someone who's not thinking about measurement would be able to see, right? We do better with alumni than not. But let's say that we had but anyway. Let's say that we had 85 opportunities. So of the proposals we wrote, of those proposals had alumni in, and the other 15 did not. Okay? won 90% of the proposals we did, right? So let's say that we had 100 proposals, we won the job 90 times. And let's say that we had alumni in 50 of those 90, right? You would say that the majority of the time that we win, there's alumni in. That's correct, okay? But let's say that of those 100 proposals, okay, 80 of those proposals had alumni, and the other 20 proposals had no alumni. When you actually look at our win percentage, we won 90 of those 100, and 50 of them had alumni. That means that 50 out of 80 was our alumni win percentage, and the other 40 out, so that doesn't work, so my numbers are off. But let me just do this. So let's say of those 100 proposals, 60 were written for firms that had alumni, the other 40 were written for firms with no alumni. We won 90% of those, right? Of those 90 wins, 50 of them had alumni. So it looks like the majority of the wins come from alumni, but your actually win percentage is 50 out of the 60 meetings with alumni and 40 out of 40 of non-alumni. It shows you that your win percentage is actually 100% when there's no alumni in the company versus 5/6 is whatever it is. 83%. That's an example where when someone's only looking at the win observation, they're not looking at the success rate. Do you see the difference? So you're actually more successful when there's not alumni there. You're winning 100% of the time, 40 out of 40 versus 50 out of 60. Does that make sense? So I forget the actual numbers real world in this example, but that was what I found. That the firm thought that we did better with alumni than not, but in fact the opposite was true. But no one was doing the measurement properly. Does that make sense? Okay. So you'd actually be saying, well, we'd be better off going after non-alumni business. Right? Or like, in other words, we used to think like, oh, don't chase the companies where we don't have alumni. It's a dead end. It was not true. The numbers weren't exactly like that, but you can see how you could have a false belief based upon the numbers. Does that make sense? So you have to look at the success rate, not the absolute value of the observations. Okay. If you do that, you will recognize things that have always been going on that no one has noticed there. And if you do it, you can do it by industry type, you can do it by salesperson, you can do this by lead generation. So the other thing was like, oh, referrals. So a lot of the times we're referred, what does this pipeline look like relative to where it starts with a cold call or a fast response, right? So all those people that phone in and they contact us by phone, how does the funnel look like relative to those that just fax in a sheet? And when we're referring business, what does it look like? So type of catalyst, lead generation technique, you can do all this analysis, all those different ways. And that's what you should be doing. That's why CRMs, this is why you have Salesforce.
Isn't a success rate always measured with a sales conversion?
It's the easiest metric to look at because you know when you win and lose, but you can definitely look at other things. So for instance, of the ones where we won the job, we'd also look at what percentage of these firms give referrals. And of those that spawned referrals, what was that? You might find like, here's a company that we only did one contract with, but they referred us 6 times, and that's generated a whole stream. That needs to be tracked back to the organization that referred you, because it would never have happened if you didn't have that. So if you rely on referrals in your model, you definitely want to be tracking that. Like, Jeevan went through a program before this one on dental practice management that we teach through Exec Ed, and that was like a big thing that we taught those guys. You know, look at your campaign techniques, referrals, other types of lead generation, and be doing this type of math to look at it. So do you guys feel like you can do it? You just got to work off the side of your desk and do it. Like, you just got to, like, wow, if I'm not out there hunting, I'm not bringing in business. But the fact is, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. You don't really know where you're effective. So this changes, with the feedback that you get from this, you'll make changes to your strategy. You'll think about where you want to allocate resources. So for us, it was all about, let's be better about qualifying meetings and get that 60% that end up in writing a proposal up. In other words, for the ones that they asked for more information or they ended contact, is there a way we could have known that earlier? So we wouldn't have wasted the half day taking the meeting. Because if you, let me put it this way, if you are not working 5 days a week already, then maybe there's less benefit. Like, I have lots of idle time, I can be selective. But if you can't keep up with what you're chasing after, then this has got huge, huge benefits, because you are wasting your time going after a lot of business that's going to be dead end. You just don't necessarily know or why. So think of it as when you play a card game, right? You want to identify that you have a losing hand as early as possible, because you don't want to waste money betting on something that's going to lead to a loss outcome. So the earlier I can fold my hand, the better. Which is a lot of sales mentality, like, no, chase, 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 right? It's like, why would I chase a flush? If I know that 30% of the time I'm going to lose the hand, fuck the wishful thinking, because I'm full of it. I'm wrong 70% of the time. And you love to play against players like that, because they'll always put money in chasing. You're like, that's great. It just makes the pot bigger for those that win. Okay.
If you were to do a digital campaign using this funnel,
and you do this for every time you run a campaign, right?
yeah. And a lot of times digital campaigns are measured in impressions.
Yeah.
Don't follow through to like a sales conversion.
Yes, and that's a problem.
So that it,
Well, I mean, at least you have measurement on the upstream, but if you can't figure out the downstream conversion, I would argue that you're being a naive optimist, because your measures are fine. So I can show you what I did with our program to try to get better measurement. Okay, so but the point here is, what are the different starting points for lead generation, and separate it by medium, by tactic, by source. What are the various paths to the win? So you might have multiple paths, right? But you need to map them all out. And for instance, request for proposals versus unsolicited proposals. If there is an RFP, so that's one, I mean, a lot of you might be in situations where you respond to RFPs. You should absolutely, at a minimum, looking at what is our success rate on RFP responses versus unsolicited business. Because in some industries, you might actually choose to just be like, we're done doing RFPs. They take up a huge amount of resources, really coordinated effort, and we never win. Fuck it. Maybe the RFP is a fool's errand, and they've already got a preferred vendor. They're just doing the RFP because they have to for due diligence. Okay. So we track each stage. All right. So when I took over the directorship of SMEI, I forget if it was 2011, 2012, but it was around there. And they had just recruited a first-year class of 17 people.